Communism is on the march in Brazil. In the most economically unequal country in Latin America, a growing movement is taking land from the rich to give to the poor. And landowners are mobilizing.
Mesmo que fosse improdutiva, a terra tem dono.
Now conflict over land is escalating.
That's where you were shot.
Que foi a bala que eles atirou.
As activists clash with landowners, who will win the battle for land in Brazil? In agriculture, Brazil is a global superpower. As the world's largest exporter of corn and soy, agribusiness makes up a quarter of Brazil's GDP. But that wealth is not being shared. Just 1% of the country owns almost 50% of the land. And in states like Bahia, the inequality is stark, especially for Black and Indigenous Brazilians. This is the region where Portuguese colonialists first seized the land from the indigenous inhabitants and built one of the largest slave ports in the entire Americas. Not only is this where Brazil's racial inequalities began, but where it became bound up with just who owned the land. And despite its riches, over a quarter of Brazil's households are considered food insecure. But there is a communist resurgence brewing. Hundreds of thousands are using militant methods to seize land, build homes, and claim it as their own. This camp in Itabela is run by the Landless Rural Workers Movement, known as the MST. The Marxist-inspired group occupies land using a clause in Brazil's constitution that says unproductive land can be used for social good. The aim is everyone gets a plot to cultivate and eventually live a self-sufficient life.
Eu saio. Vai, joga.
Maricete and her 4 children have been on this camp for a year.
Essa aqui.
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
How long have you been living here for?
Eu moro aqui desde quando começou o assentamento. E com isso eu tô sobrevivendo, graças a Deus, mas eu tô vivendo aqui melhor, mesmo num barraquinho de lona, mas eu tô vivendo melhor do que na cidade grande. Pra mim aqui tá ótimo aqui.
The single mother built this hut herself after she left her job as a domestic worker in the nearest city, but struggled to buy food. How does this place compare to your home in the city?
Não tem comparação. Pra gente que mora na cidade, a gente não é bom. Às vezes é bom para quem tem condições, né? Eu me sentia escravizada, porque eu fazia 2 trabalhos para ganhar muito pouco e trabalhava demais. Por isso que a gente precisa ter um lugarzinho de terra para poder a gente plantar, colher, para não precisar chegar ao ponto de passar fome, como eu já cheguei ao ponto de passar fome dentro da minha casa. Eu vou.
But there is a problem over who owns the land Maricete is occupying. The 500 families in this DIY township are fighting an eviction order from farmers who say the land belongs to them. These legal battles can take decades to resolve, and in that time settlements expand, leading to conflict. Across Brazil, there are currently 100,000 families living in temporary camps, and the number is growing. This year, the landless workers have occupied at least 35 new sites across the country, up 150% on 2023. And now I've just had a tip-off about a new one in the state of Espirito Santo, south of Bahia. So right now we're just on the outskirts of São Mateus, and we're heading towards the MST's latest land capture. It's a former flower plant. Bom dia.
Oi, bom dia.
Symeon.
Sejam bem-vindos ao nosso acampamento. Olá, galera.
This camp is just 3 days old. Since the communist group took the land, it's been a communal effort to clear the ground, build tents, and wire electric.
Senhor Jesus Cristo.
There's even a Sunday service preaching liberation theology at the heart of the movement.
Deus está do nosso lado. Ele é o único que nunca nos abandona. E vamos conseguir essa terra
The MST is a controversial movement that is either loved or hated for its direct action. They show me how a few nights earlier they seized the site. Under the cover of night, they filmed themselves smashing the lock of the old flour mill. Now they direct hundreds of waiting families onto the land before anyone can stop them.
Vai, 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 vai.
Since they occupied, the camp has been on high alert. They know the first few days of an occupation are the most dangerous.
Is that the police? Yeah. So you can just see over there, the police are watching.
The campers say that just hours into the occupation, the site was surrounded by hostile local farmers who opposed their movement.
And there's an expectation that at some point there could be a standoff. So at different points across the camp are people keeping watch.
There's real reason to be worried. Shots have been fired and homemade bombs have been thrown into the camp.
Aí a gente escutou grito, vagabundo! Aí a gente ficou olhando, aí passou a Saveiro.
A Saveiro
Passou
branca.
assim, indo naquela direção. Aí deu 4 tiros.
Of the 2 explosives thrown into the camp, one immediately went off, but a police bomb squad had to detonate the other.
Se explodisse próximo, né, das pessoas, poderiam matar pelo menos 5 a 6 pessoas que tivesse ao seu redor. Então a bomba não foi para assustar, a bomba de fato jogaram para matar.
There is a sense of déjà vu of this occupation. The landless workers were evicted from here 22 years ago, and yet they're back.
In the past, the court had asked you to leave. There was currently an order asking you to do the same. Do you not respect the rule of law?
Nós não estamos desobedecendo a ação judicial, porque nós estamos dentro do prazo. Nós temos um prazo de 15 dias para poder responder. Se essas famílias aqui forem despejadas, nós não temos um outro local para essas famílias irem.
For now, the camp is calm. But although there is concern about future attacks, they are only stepping up their plans. In Bahia's capital, Salvador, the landless workers are marching to the regional government. In its 40th year, the communist movement is having a renaissance. In 2022, their 1.5 million members helped to bring the left-wing President Lula da Silva to power. Since then, its occupations have surged as the movement hoped it's pushing at an open door.
Everyone here is marching to the regional assembly. But in many ways, although this is a protest, this is actually a victory procession.
Continuaremos organizados e organizadas.
President Lula is the son of sharecroppers, elected on a ticket of improving the lot of the working poor. Now the movement wants the president to make all its temporary camps official and speed up the process of land reform.
And now they're going into government.
But land rights activists have long faced violent opposition from landowners trying to defend their properties.
E estamos aqui porque a luta continua, a guerra continua. Só se é permitido descansar quando a luta dos nossos mortos se realizar por inteiro.
Today, activists are honouring martyrs who died in the struggle. 420 people have been killed in conflicts over land in the past decade. And outside the government's offices, I find 2 movement veterans who are no strangers to conflict. Celia and Shoda live on occupied land and have come face to face with armed farmers trying to forcibly evict them.
Você não pensa assim, se vai morrer ou se vai matar, você tá para se defender.
A gente sabe que a gente vive em luta, então nunca sabemos o que pode acontecer, porque a gente não luta por um bem individual. A gente luta por um bem coletivo. Então a gente não está ali pedindo para morrer, a gente só quer os nossos direitos garantidos.
But the MST has opponents, and they're getting organized. Worried by the resurgence of MST activity, last year a new movement emerged to rally farmers and landowners, calling itself Invasion Zero. Its 15,000 members used WhatsApp groups to coordinate against land seizures.
Esse projeto está terminando com esse movimento terrorista MST.
The group also has a political arm, endorsed by the former far-right president Jair Bolsonaro. He relaxed Brazil's gun laws and lobbies for the interests of agribusiness. So we're headed 7 hours south from the capital of Bahia, Salvador, and we're heading to a region that is well known for producing cocoa, and it's where the founders of Invasion Zero are based. After a recent killing appearing to implicate the movement, the group's everyday members are proving hard to find. But one of the founders has agreed to speak to us.
Bom dia.
Dida Souza is from a dynasty of landowners. A farm she inherited was occupied by the landless workers 17 years ago. She hasn't been to the seized land in over a decade, but today, Dida's decided to take us back and has no idea what we'll find.
Começa aqui a fazenda, né? Uma tarefa de terra que eles plantam por fazenda de 1.000 hectares. Que invade uma fazenda deste tamanho, não paga o proprietário, não assenta o pessoal com documentação e eles não trabalham.
Dida's land is in legal limbo. After so many years, the state has still not decided if she can have it back or if the landless workers camped here get to stay. As soon as we arrive, she starts to attract a crowd.
Bom dia! Você tá boa? Bem. Como vai? Vocês estão na terra que eles nunca pagaram ao Osvaldo e não ajuda vocês a plantar nada.
Dida is holding an olive branch, but maintained the landless workers took her father's land illegally, as the farm was active when it was occupied. Was the MST wrong to occupy this land?
Não diria que está errado. 17 anos atrás ela produzia apenas as roças de cacau e os mangueiros, certo? E hoje ela produz vários outros tipos de fruta.
But if this land was producing cocoa before, that means it wasn't unproductive. And isn't the MST's policy to only occupy unproductive land?
Ela estava improdutiva, sim. As roças perdidas, os mangueiros já perdidos.
Não,
então,
isso
de forma...
você não pode dizer.
Não pode?
Não, ela colhia 6.000 arrobas de cacau, eu te dou toda a documentação da Cagil. Mesmo que fosse improdutiva, a terra tem dono. Sim.
Todos querem receber, claro. É um caso que a gente não tem culpa. Né? A gente não tem culpa.
Ninguém tem culpa aqui, nem vocês, nem eu.
E nem a senhora. Isso.
Exatamente. Deixa eu lhe dar um abraço. Deixa eu dizer uma coisa a vocês. Eu não quero fazer mal a ninguém.
In a handbrake turn, Dida offers to give her land to the group.
Se o INCRA liberar a minha parte, eu divido e dou documentação toda de vocês. Minha, sem receber nada. Então, isso é um compromisso que eu faço com vocês. Estou pedindo voto não, viu?
This is the first time Dida has been here in over 10 years, and the woman who founded Invasion Zero has now promised to give away her part of the land so they can live here.
But seemingly happy endings are uncommon in land disputes. Invasion Zero faces accusations it was involved in an incident where a tribal leader was killed. 150 miles from Dida's farm, the town of Pau, Brazil is celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. In this area, 4 people have been killed in disputes over contested ancestral land this year. Today's ceremonies are a show of defiance. This nearby territory belongs to the Patisho people. After a long campaign to reclaim indigenous ground from private landowners, the government awarded the tribe 54,000 hectares of land in 2012. But Chief Nelton Patisho says ground historically belonging to the tribe is still in the hands of local farmers. In January, the tribe went to occupy the land, when he says they were ambushed by up to 200 farmers and landowners rallied by Invasion Zero.
O pessoal do Invasão Zero chegou escoltado pela polícia militar da Bahia. Os índios estavam desarmados e eles estavam armados. Aí usaram a violência, né, atirando, batendo nos índios de pau. A quantidade deles era um número muito grande. A polícia militar não se mexeu, não fez nada, virou as costas para os índios e deixou que tudo acontecesse.
Many indigenous people were injured. Chief Patisho was shot in the kidney and taken to hospital to be operated on.
Wow. That's where you were shot?
Que foi a bala, né, que eles atirou.
His sister Nega Patisho was also shot. Together, they lay on the ground trying to take cover, but she died before the ambulance arrived.
Aí eu abracei forte, falei que ela ia resistir, falei que ela era forte, mas aí ela foi se amolecendo e morreu, né?
Nega Patisho held a doctorate in education and was highly respected for her work on women's rights, a spiritual leader at the heart of her people.
Quem tirou a vida dela, tirou a vida de uma pessoa muito importante na nossa comunidade. Uma covardia de eles ter matado a minha irmã sem arma, sem nada, só com uma maraca na mão.
But some have accused the Patisho of starting the violence, and a farmer was hit in the arm with one of the tribe's arrows.
The Invasion Zeros say that it was the occupants of the land who fired first, not them.
Eles querem justificar, né, o erro deles, né, caluniando os índios. Isso que a gente tem, né, as nossas burdunas, né, nossas lanças, nosso arco e flecha. A gente não tem arma de fogo.
And right now, are you scared to be here?
Olha, eu estou correndo risco de vida. Isso, eu não posso estar indo na cidade assim sem uma escolta.
2 men have been arrested. The military police told us that one of them was a reservist policeman who is being investigated. They say they act in accordance with legal protocols and standards, and that police action is reasonable and proportionate in all phases of land repossession. Invasion Zero is also being investigated by the federal police over its alleged role in the incident. Now its founders have difficult questions to face.
Some people have called Invasion Zero a militia. Are you a militia?
Não, claro que não somos uma milícia. Nós somos produtores desprotegidos por esse governo que está aí. Que queremos sim uma reforma agrária, mas não uma invasão de terra. Não usamos armas, não usamos nada, nem arma branca, nem arma quente, nada, absolutamente nada.
But this year, an indigenous leader was shot dead by a farmer identified as being part of Invasion Zero.
Na verdade, você tem que entender que esse garoto ele não participava do grupo. A participação única e exclusiva do Invasão Zero foi comunicar e avisar onde era o local de saída, registrar o boletim de ocorrência. A polícia foi na frente com todos os produtores e o que aconteceu foi um infortúnio, uma tragédia. Isso é do governo, responsabilidade da polícia, responsabilidade do governo que permite que isso aconteça.
You've been very critical of the government, but one thing the government would like to see is a de-escalation of conflict. Do you think the best thing to do now is to stand aside and let the authorities handle it?
Gostaria muito. Esse é o propósito do Invasão Zero. Nós só reagimos àquilo que somos provocados. Num dia que não tiver invasão, não existe mais Invasão Zero.
With President Lula in power, the Landless Workers Movement have political cover, and the government has pledged to settle 300,000 families by 2026. But to enact its reforms, it also needs the support of wealthy farmers who drive the economy.
Hola, señor.
Philippe Freitas is Secretary of Justice and Human Rights for Bahia. He oversees investigations into land disputes in the state.
A meu ver, é legítimo que os ruralistas se organizem para defender os interesses do agronegócio. No entanto, eles precisam atuar dentro da legalidade, responsabilizando pelas consequências das suas afirmações no debate público. No entanto, a formação de grupos armados a qualquer pretexto na ordem democrática é absolutamente preocupante e inadmissível.
Invasion Zeros say that they have to mobilize because you have failed, not only in how slow you are in processing land acquisitions, but also in the failure to protect land. Are they right?
O governo do estado da Bahia mantém fortes diálogos com o setor produtivo brasileiro, com o grande agronegócio, é importante para o desenvolvimento do estado. Mas isso não representará qualquer tipo de criminalização dos movimentos sociais de luta pela terra.
How do we actually create wealth for the poorest?
A terra ela é riqueza, mas a terra ela é poder no Brasil. E, portanto, uma maneira de fazer uma reforma agrária completa, ou seja, uma reforma agrária que não democratize apenas o acesso à terra, mas democratize o poder no Brasil, é a gente repartir politicamente a representação política no país. E, portanto, não é um desafio apenas dos governos, mas é um desafio dos governos e da sociedade brasileira. E um desafio, portanto, muito complexo.
Many in Brazil agree that land reform is overdue. But the country is yet to resolve what that best looks like. For those who join the Landless Workers Movement, this is it.
Hey. Bom dia.
Celia and Shoda, who I met back at the march in Salvador, have invited me to their own slice of paradise. After 15 years of uncertainty, legal battles and risks to their safety, the government has made their MST settlement official.
É bom demais, é uma felicidade imensa, viu? Por isso que sempre eu defendo o movimento, onde eu passar, em qualquer lugar que eu passar.
Every generation of Celia and Shoda's families have worked for landowners, but this plot is theirs to keep. The land still belongs to the state, but they have permanent use of it and can hand it down to their children.
4 gerações que não tinha conseguido comprar pedaço de terra. Meus irmãos, a gente trabalha em grande fazenda dos outros ainda.
Acho que demoraria a vida inteira. Nós não conseguiríamos ter pedaço de terra para a gente trabalhar e sobreviver.
What do you think the first generation of your family to be in Brazil would make of your life here now?
Eles iam ficar muito felizes. Meu pai já era feliz de eu estar aqui. Ele falava assim que antes dele adoecer, dele partir, ele falava que a vontade dele era estar aqui mais eu, me ajudando. Eu ia ficar muito feliz de ver nós aqui na nossa terrinha trabalhando.
Shoda and Celia have food security and a home. This may be their communist utopia, but the state retains the farm. And as long as the wealthiest 1% still own most of Brazil's land, the country's chronic inequalities will only widen.